Well, hello, my lovely Patreons, and today I am presenting another issue in our Numerology EDU series. We're doing number three this month, three. And why are we doing numbers? Because numbers are so important in everything esoteric, from divination to spell casting. Anytime we try to manipulate or transmute energy, numbers play a part. Quantum physics, entanglement theory, what does this all have in common? Math. And what is the tool we use for math? Numbers. And so we do this deep dive each month into each number so we know the value esoterically of that number. So we can apply it to our day-to-day spiritual life, our belief systems, our spell castings, our divinations, just so that we have a really well-rounded view of what a number really truly means. Especially when you're doing synastry work. There's applications in astrology, there's applications in Mensa screening, right? So this month we are going to deep dive into number three. So let's not dilly dally. I'll pull up the PowerPoint and let's get to it. This is the hardest part for me. I got to share my screen. Let's figure it out, you guys. All right, share. There we go. Let's make me big. There I am. Close this out, and here we go. Maybe the number three. All right, so let's deep dive. Oof, I'm not even using arrows. Here we go. All right, so spiritually, the number three really symbolizes harmonization. You can look at that in terms of wholeness. You can look at that in terms of divine completeness of some sort, like if you already casted a spell and you're divinating on it. It sort of represents a synthesis of opposing forces, right? So a lot of times when we're talking about the number three, you'll see referenced, the Trinity, for example, in Christianity, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. In Hinduism, the Trimurti, right? Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Or in other belief systems, it could, in yogini systems, it can, or tantric systems, it breaks down to mind, body, spirit, and it breaks down in divinatory aspects and astrological aspects to past, present, future. So three holds a lot of symbolic meaning depending on how you're using it, how you're applying it. So from the divine wholeness and completion aspect, this number often signifies a complete cycle, kind of like the world in the tarot, right? Such as the resurrection on the third day in Christian theology is a good example of this. Balance and harmony. So it kind of serves as a mediator between two, the number two. We talked about two last month. If you missed that, I think I posted it on my YouTube. I'm not sure. Otherwise, you can ask me for that link. I can send it to you. But basically, it's resolving the conflict of that number and bringing in balance. A good example of that is the three-stranded cord we use in witchery, right? It is considered a number of creativity, communication, and growth. It appears exactly 467 times in the Bible for my Christian practitioners, oftentimes highlighting that divine perfection. Or if it's repeated, like in the Holy, 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 the trio of holies, especially if you were ever forced into Sunday school choirs, lots of those songs use holy three times. And that's basically for the intensity and importance that is kind of being conveyed through that sacred word, sacred sound, sacred syllable that is basically a spell that we're just verbalizing. Um, it represents the stages of life, not lice, life, birth, life, and death, and time, past, present, and future. In various spiritual traditions, three represents the perfection and spiritual fortitude needed for ministry or personal growth. So, if you are a third party practitioner like myself, a healer of some sort, three is representative of being able to facilitate that role appropriately. And so I did pull, just for funsies, off the internet, angel number three. So that angel number, when you're looking at angel numbers, some of you that are my clients, I know do angel divination. It does mean self-expression, creativity, harmony. Again, that harmonization force, wisdom, and that connection to the divine. All right. All right. So in witchcraft specifically, and in these series, I like to break down numbers into different categories. Some of the information might be a little bit repetitive, but there's always small differentiators. So in witchcraft, specifically. The number three represents expansion, creation, and the bridging of energy, right? So, especially in spell casting, ritual, things of that nature. So, oftentimes it signifies that that magic must be actively cast, spoken, or lived. It acts as kind of like a sacred number, symbolizing the unity, wisdom, and cycles. And when we talk about cycles in witchcraft, what we're talking about is the beginning, the middle, and the end. So, this is especially important in ritual or in any kind of energetic manipulation, energetic transmutation, even in radionics, when you're working with quantum physics energy, right? Quantum physics casting. So, some of the other highlights here in witchcraft with the number three. A lot of you are familiar with that rule of three or the threefold law. Now, I do not participate in this belief, and I'll kind of get into that later on in the presentation here, but a lot of you do. It's a very prominent Wiccan belief that any energy, positive or negative, sent out is going to return to the sender three times. So there are a lot of practitioners that view this as a metaphorical reminder of accountability for their actions. And that's what I really believe this is. Do I believe that it comes back three times? No, I don't believe in the threefold law. I do not attest to that in my practice. There are karmic workarounds. However, I do believe it exists to make sure that we are acting ethically, responsibly, and that we are accountable for the work that we are doing. The triple goddess, of course, and that's one of I have this beautiful little art thing I found online here. The triple goddess, this represents the phases of the moon and womanhood, of course. So you have the maiden, that's the youth, right? The new moon. You have the mother, which is like the full moon or fertility, and then the crone, the waning moon or wisdom. And funny enough, somebody asked me the other day, how do you differentiate the stages, right? Especially mother to crone. And I really truly believe that that transition from mother, full moon, fertility to crone, which is the waning moon or wisdom, in essence is menopause. Once menopause hits, I think that is the transition from mother to crone. Not that that has anything to do with the number three, but I'm just throwing that in there. All right, ritual and action. So a lot of times you'll find, especially in the old gardener, like traditional rites of witchcraft, which I do have on my YouTube. You'll have to scroll all the way down. It was one of my first EDU videos I posted, but things are often repeated three times, right? Chanting, tapping, not magic. And this is really done to seal intentions and increase power. You're kind of stacking energy by doing that. The universal trinity. Of course, this represents body, mind, and spirit, and the past, present, and future, or you can look at it as earth, sun, and moon. Basically, these trios signify a balanced whole experience, which is what three is all about. Symbols and mythology. The number three appears all over the place, but especially in Celtic, Greek, and Roman lore. So if you're studying the Fates, the Norns, the Triskelions, the number three is very infused in their customs and practices, in their folklore, such as the three witches or the weird sisters. Both these groups represent divine arbitrators of destiny, right? So three is attached to destiny from a folklore standpoint. So the number three is generally considered a very sacred and powerful number that embodies the active creative forces of magic in witchcraft, right? It's the action orientation piece. Hang on. All right, moving on. Let's move me out of the way. I'm blocking the screen here. Okay, so in spell casting. So using the number three in spell casting, I don't care what your method is. I don't care if you're a quantum magician, if you are a root worker, if you're a compounder, if you are chaos, old school, whatever it is, a traditionalist, a popetrist. Here's the thing. Using the number three in spell casting is always going to strengthen rituals by invoking balance, right? Unity, harmony through that triadic structure. It is structure, right? So it is used to build energy, stack energy. It represents phases, again, like that maiden, mother, crone. And it activates sometimes that rule of three. So for those of you that are Wiccan, it kind of ensures the intentions return threefold in terms of, like, say you're doing a prosperity work, you're kind of tripling up and doubling down on that prosperity payout. Common techniques include using three items, repeating actions three times, or chanting, or using sacred syllables, sacred words three times. Especially, you'll find that in Buddhism, Tibetan tantric magic, they use mantras. And you will notice that there is that repetitive edge. And they're not all like, especially with the Terras, we're looking at Buddhist deities like the red and black Terra. There isn't a whole lot of that thrice chanting, but there are deities where it exists within that pantheon. All right, so let's dive into this a little bit more here. So the triadic component here, right? Working with items in groups of three. So it could be like three candles, for example, white symbolizing purity, cleansing for the work, red for empowering the work, and black for protecting or warding the work, right? Three different crystals, three different herbs when you're building compounds and root work. All of this is done in that triadic component to build focused energy, stability, and again, to stack energy really more than anything else. Repetition, chanting, prayers, stating intentions three times. I put a little example here just, to be cutesy by it, but, all of this can be used, this repetition, this verbalization, this vocalization to finalize or seal spells as well. Timing. Oh, let me move me again. So performing spells sometimes over the course of 3 days or at specific times like 3 a.m. or 3 p.m. Those of you like myself who incorporate astrology into your energetic manifestation work, you may go by the planetary hours. So it's similar to that. Or it could be the three phases of the moon, waxing, full, or waning. So timing does play into that number three, depending again on your belief system and how you cast, because this is specific to spell casting, of course. Symbolic representation, use the number to represent the triple goddess, the union of mind, body, and spirit. And you can get creative here, you guys. So when we talk about symbolic representation, last month, I did a presentation in our Sacred Sexuality series about the dark goddesses. So Mama Bridget, Pumbagera, and Lilith. That could be another symbolic set of three goddesses if you're doing dark goddess work that you could call in. So you can be creative here. You can kind of work whatever magic you need to work within that triadic component on however it fits well for you. And then again, I'm going to bring up that rule of three, that threefold law. Again, in many Wiccan traditions, it basically states that energy, sent out into the universe is going to return to the caster three times over. Again, this is a very Wiccan belief. Not all Wiccans participate in this belief, but I'm bringing it up because it is mentioned a lot with, the power of using the number three. So I want to make sure I'm giving you guys all the meat and potatoes here. Now, I believe that this threefold law really is that ethical reminder. It's, a warning to be responsible with magical power and probably not a lot more than that. Just a reminder to, don't be an idiot. The origins, again, I'm going back to Gardner, the traditional rites of witchcraft. This concept is traced back to Gardner. It was kind of popularized as an interpretation of the Wiccan Rite. So when we look at perspective, while it's common in Wicca, some practitioners of other paths, like in Brujeria, do not follow this rule. They instead prioritize things like justice or defensive magic, which is the stance I take. Now, the number three in spell casting is associated with creation. So if you're creating new lines of energy, you're attaching new lines of energy to somebody who has damaged energy that's not healing, repairing, or restoring itself properly. Or you're making something out of available resources too. You're kind of like stacking, compounding, regenerating something. So it is a powerful number across cultures and traditions, and it is linked to the concepts of birth, death, and rebirth. So those of you who have ever done rebirthing work with me, I know not everybody, understands this kind of puppetry work, but when I am dissecting those impregnated uteruses, I do prefer the pig because there is usually at least 3 piglets or fetal pigs that I can use for that cast. And again, that's symbolizing the birth, death, and rebirth of an energetic source that I'm tapping into. So it's just an example of the number three being applied to spell casting. Okay, let's talk about personalities, right? A lot of us do assessing as part of our divination. We're looking at synastry, we're evaluating charts, astrological charts, numerological charts. I like looking at life path numbers. It just kind of gives me more, I guess, tools for my toolbox when I'm trying to figure out what's going to work best for somebody in terms of magic. So a life path number three is known as the creative communicator. There's kind of a focus on creative self-expression with this person, with communication, right? They are often very artistic, they're funny, they're very sociable. They usually do really well in careers that involve any kind of performance, any kind of art, writing. Um, their challenges in life really is fighting their own inner demons when it comes to their own self-confidence. They struggle with self-doubt. Sometimes, especially if they have Leo placements, um, especially a Leo sun, Leo rising, they might struggle with superficiality, right? They might struggle with maintaining focus. They can be a bit scattered, and they can also be very emotionally sensitive depending on their moon placement. So let's break that down a little bit more. If you are life path number three, you can skip to the end of this page. In my very first presentation, I did do a calculator so you could calculate your life path number. And here's just at the end of the page here, another example on how to calculate your life path number if you want to try it, or your partners if you're looking at synastry. So you're basically going to add together the digits of your full birth date, so month, day, year, until you reach a single digit. Now, 11, 22, and 33, those are master numbers. You do not break those down. Everything else breaks down. So I have an example here, May 11th, 1994. You can kind of just follow the math here. It breaks down to that number three. So break yours down. If you are a number three, if your partner's a number three, if your mom, your kid, whoever is a number three, your boss, let's break down what that looks like. So in the creative and expressive department, these individuals do have this natural gift for communication and this natural gift for creative arts. So they can act, they can write, they love music. They're probably naturally very good at music, whether it's an instrument or singing or writing it, and art in all its forms. They're very social people. They're usually very happy people. They're very charismatic. A lot of times with number threes, I find Neptune placements in the first house. They're fun, they're fun loving. They like to be the center of attention. Again, Leo placements, especially sun or moon, or sun or rising. My fault there, sun or rising. Very charming, very funny. They have kind of like that gift for gab. They're very sharp-witted, so they have these really fresh, funny comebacks. They can be very emotional. They're deeply connected to their emotions. And I think one of their life tasks is learning to express those emotions authentically. That's probably an area they struggle. So some of the life lessons and challenges somebody with a life path number three is going to face. Overcoming insecurities probably is number one. They need to overcome their own self-doubts, their fear of being judged, their discipline. They probably have to spend a lot of energy and time developing focus and commitment to transform all that artistic potential into real tangible results, rather than being just kind of scattered, or being that kind of social butterfly that starts something and just never finishes it and talks about it. It's social events, but there's never an end product or an end result. Patience, I think life path number threes are tasked with learning patience, especially in communication. They sometimes can be very overly critical, and they are prone to gossip. That emotional balance piece, learning to kind of navigate these emotions without being overwhelmed. They need to try to avoid being overly sensitive, right? So in career, I think some of the top career paths for number three is going to be, again, anything in the performance industry, acting, creating music, being a comedian. I think a lot of comedians probably are life path number threes. In the communication department, writing, being a publicist, a radio personality, a TV personality, a host of some sort. In the creativity department, anything that really involves art, designers, content creators. When we look at social and entertainment, careers, I think, an event planner, like a wedding planner, a teacher and a counselor too would fall into a really good career field for life path number three. Now, when we shift gears and look at love and relationships, I think these individuals probably need partners who are very supportive of their need for self expression. I think they are highly romantic and they do seek joy in relationships, but they do tend to be highly engaging and playful in their romantic lives, which is a double edged sword, right? That's good, but also can cause issues if it's too playful and not serious enough. They have to kind of find that middle ground. So, that is my life path number three breakdown for you. So let's take a look at just straight numerology here, right? So, and this is separate from numerological astrology, which I have a slide on here later on. When we're looking at straight numerology, a lot of the same themes apply. So the number three is associated again with that creativity, the communication, and optimism. It is governed by Jupiter. So people born on the 3rd, the 12th, the 21st, or the 30th of any month, or with that three life path that we just talked about, are typically funny, social, expressive, oftentimes possessing that gift of gab that we just talked about, and artistic talents. They are natural performers and creators. Again, a lot of this is just kind of repetitive here. So, in straight numerology, if you're doing a persona assessment, their strengths are the same: highly creative, social, optimistic, and charming. Their weaknesses, same thing. They're going to have a difficult time finishing projects. They become distracted very easily. And sometimes in numerology, you'll see these small variations, whereas a life path number three is very emotionally sensitive. In numerology, if you're doing this assessment, they tend to avoid deep emotional issues. They're very avoidant. So there's a little bit of a difference there. Governing planet, like I said, is Jupiter, which of course brings, wisdom and expansion. Their best partners, as a three, their best life path numbers are going to be ones, fives, or sixes. Honestly, they're going to do very well with those individuals. Lucky colors: yellow, cream, light blue. Again, creativity and artistry. They're gifted with writing, with speaking, with artistic endeavors. They're social butterflies who really excel at building relationships and communicating ideas. They're very optimistic. They kind of possess that youthful, fun-loving, and kind of cheerful outlook on life, which is great. That's hard to do, especially as we age. Again, those lessons, they have to develop consistency in their life and with their relationships. Follow through is a problem. That is a major life lessons for number threes. They really can rely too much on inspiration rather than steady work. Again, a lot of talk with very little follow through. So that is the task for a number three, definitely is the follow through. So numerology number threes, they really need to be careful with their childlike nature. Sometimes they can be perceived as being immature, or it can be perceived as a sign of immaturity. So in cartomancy, a lot of times those jacks, the four jacks, those really have that flavor of life path number threes or numerological number threes. So if you ever done a cartomancy with me and we found a jack, maybe causing some problems or involved in a situation that I was reading, they're probably a three. All right. So, all right, moving on. So let's look at signs and synchronicities, right? I'm always talking about that, especially if I've manipulated energy for you. One of the follow-ups always is pay attention to the signs and synchronicities, because once we release this energy, the universe is going to want to talk to you. It's going to want to, give you some information, some downloads. So seeing the number three, numbers are one of the easiest ways that the universe can communicate with us. Especially if we're looking at sequences like 333, 3333. This is frequently interpreted as a sign of alignment, creativity, and spiritual support. So it's usually a very good thing to see these threes after a casting. It does indicate karmic support for the work and for the manifest process. So in the context of synchronicity, three acts as a message from the universe or your personal spiritual guides that you are on the right path and that your thoughts are manifesting into reality. So oftentimes after spell casting, if somebody's telling me they're seeing or experiencing a lot of threes, I will tell them, well, the universe supports the work and, things are structuring in terms of manifest presentation. So sit back and enjoy the ride. Here it comes. Now, um, going a little bit deeper into this, when we're looking at ascended masters, when we're looking at spiritual supports, seeing that triple three, 333, that often signifies that you are being surrounded and guided by ascended masters. And depending on your belief system, that can vary greatly. But, like in Christian pantheons, it's usually like Jesus, Moses, other spiritual teachers. And that is really an indication that you're safe and supported with whatever is going on. When we're looking at alignment, especially mind, body, and spirit, let's go a more yogini path here, tantric path here. That number 3 represents the Trinity, right? Reminding you to bring like your mental, physical, and spiritual self into harmony. So sometimes there's a lot of support. Um, there's karmic support, there's deital support, there's energetic support, but you might be the holdup, right? So it might be that you need to get your mind, your body, and your spirit on the same operating page so it's not creating blockage to whatever it is you're trying to manifest. You need that harmonization. So we're talking about creativity and self-expression, usually threes, when you're experiencing a lot of them, it's kind of a call to unleash your creativity, share your ideas, bring more joy and optimism into your daily life, right? It's saying, hey, come on, lighten up, let's have some fun. Manifestation and growth. 3 acts as a portal for growth. It really does, suggesting that your ideas are ready to grow and flourish. You just need to give it that follow through, that little bit of energetic push, right? The positive flow, the positive influx. Communication and social connection. So this number emphasizes the importance of connecting with others, expressing your own truth, and using your voice. So sometimes if we are experiencing a lot of threes and we are in a situation where there are things not being said, we're kind of staying quiet, we're in maybe high priestess or hermit mode. This is kind of a message from the universe, from your allies, to open your mouth and speak, that you need to verbalize and vocalize what's in your mind. And instead of taking a step back and being silent, you need to put this out there. You need to put this energy out there. So it's kind of like the universe saying, what are you effing doing? Say your truth, speak your truth, and that the cards fall where they need to fall. Use your voice. So I think I have some more here because 3 is pretty, yeah, I have more. All right. So when you see the triple threes repeatedly, it could be reassurance in your decision making. So if you are taking a risk, like maybe you're changing jobs, you're maybe ending a relationship or starting a new one, seeing those triple threes is often a sign that you are making the right decision and you should take the risk. Sometimes it implies a need for balance. So it could be, kind of a gentle nudge that one of your life areas, whether it's work, your spiritual life, maybe your relationships might be a little bit out of balance and needs attention. And it can be an invitation to trust. So the presence of threes is a prompt to really trust your intuition and trust that the universe has your back. That's how we manifest. It is taking that leap of that blind faith that you have set out this energy and in your heart the universe is going to structure that manifest process and bring it into existence. We have to have that trust. If we're constantly questioning things, if we're constantly doubting, like we're having doubts, it's going to be hard to manifest things. So, how to interpret some of these signs? I would say look inward always. Oftentimes, the true meaning is found by kind of analyzing what you were thinking, doing, or feeling the moment that you saw that number. So, what was going on right before you seen those threes? That's usually, what it's referencing. Be mindful of context, of course. If you see this number while you're worrying about something, for example, I would say it's probably a sign to stop fearing and just start trusting. If you see it while maybe you're in a brainstorming session for work or something, I would say it's a sign to move forward with whatever that brainstorming idea is, that it's a good idea, move forward with it. Sometimes it's a take action call. It's a call to action, right? Energy of three is very active, so it is a prompt to turn your inspiration into reality. Again, kind of like that brainstorming example. If you have an idea, the universe is saying it's time to take action on it, bring it into reality. In addition to the triple threes, there is something that you could try. It's the 3 by 3 by 3 test. And what I mean by that is what we do is we ask for a specific sign to appear 3 times over the course of 3 days. This is something that, older school divinators probably do more than anyone else. It's not talked about as much anymore for sure, but it's used to kind of consciously invite and recognize synchronicity into our daily life. It's to make us more attuned, more aware, more intuitive. It's to wake up our clairs, but it's also a confirmation and validation request to the universe. For example, say I'm about to end a relationship, and I say, universe, whatever deities I work with, within that universal structure, I need you to let me know if this is a good idea or not. I need 3, sort of signs or synchronicities over the course of the next 3 days to kind of help me confirm and validate that this is the right course of action for me. And then you sit back, you can ask for something very specific, like I need to see a rainbow every day, for the next 3 days. I need to see a yellow dog walk in front of my house once a day for the next 3 days, whatever it is, right? You just, put something together. Ask the universe to show you validation and confirmation by making this happen. So it's something you can try if you are looking for more of a concrete validation through synchronicity, through signs using the number 3. It's the 3 by 3 by 3 test. It's old school, but try it. All right. So divination. Hang on a second. Whew. Do you guys hear that wind? It's kind of crazy windy. Zoom is pretty good with canceling that background noise. I hope it is because it's windy as hell. All right. In divination specifically, now we're moving on. The number 3 again represents some of the same things: creativity, communication, growth, and the synthesis of opposites. So same theme here, you guys. It kind of signifies a perfect number, right, of harmony and wisdom, representing completeness again across many traditions. And again, we're using the examples of past, present, future, mind, body, spirit, birth, life, death. Again, 3-card runs are very popular for a reason. The number 3 acts as a sort of catalyst. So it's kind of like, again, that bridge. It's bridging 2 opposite forces to create something new, which is why it's so applicable in spell and ritual works. So when we're looking at key aspects of the number 3 in divination specifically, let's break it down by like sub arena here. So starting with numerology, and I know we already covered the number 3 in numerological aspects, but here in divination numerology, which is a little bit different than reading somebody's chart, their numerological chart or synastry, 3 is associated with self-expression, joy, sociability, and optimism. So very similar. It is a vibrant creative energy that encourages bringing ideas into reality, often indicating a need for creative action. So a lot of 3s in a reading, that person has the right idea. They just got to do something about it, right? It also is probably an indicator that they need to use their voice more, speak their truth, have more fun, and be more positive, more positive thinking. In tarot, the number 3 corresponds, of course, to the Empress and the majors. And that, of course, represents nurturing, fertility, and nature, and many other things, depending on how you read. It's also connected to the 3 of cards, right, in the minors. So I'm going to get into this a little bit more later. I actually did a whole separate like slide here on tarot, but um, in those cards, the 3 of cups, wands, swords, blah, 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 it usually indicates a lot of collaboration, emotional growth, and very creative results. More spiritual, spontaneous meanings, frequently again seeing 333, 333 when we're looking at signs and synchronicities from a divination standpoint. You're divinating for somebody. It is considered a message from the universe or their angels or their allies to embrace those creative talents, trust their intuition, kind of embrace joy more. Symbolically, again, it represents the Trinity. So whether that is the Maiden Mother Crone or the three jewels in Buddhism, it is considered a powerful magic number used to represent that completion again, or the world in tarot, right? Beginning, middle, end, like in witchcraft and spell casting. So the Trinity or synthesis, unlike the duality of two, which oftentimes is conflict, three in divination introduces a mediator that creates harmony. So it's a good thing. So, in a lot of different interpretations, three is considered a very dynamic and positive number that signifies a move towards a more divine or perfected state of affairs for the person you're reading for. So, that's always good news, right? Even if it's in reverse, you're doing reversals. It means that they probably need to take action on something, but as soon as they do, it's going to go up right and they're going to be in the clear. All right, let's talk about the astrological significance of three. So, this is where we pair numerology and astrology together. So, you guys, I like to dive into all the different little subparticles here. So, the number three astrologically, from a numerological reference point in astrology, I don't know where that came from, but the number three again represents same things, right? Creativity, communication, charisma. It's governed by that expansive planet Jupiter, which is often referenced as the guru, right? So individuals, again, just as a reminder, born on the 3rd, 12th, 21st, or 30th of any month are considered number three natives astrologically when you're doing numerology. And again, that's characterized as optimistic people, artistic people, they're natural teachers, they have excellent communication skills. So again, the theme is continuing throughout all these subsections. Um, More about that ruling planet Jupiter, with Jupiter being the ruling planet for three, those key characteristics are, probably highly sociable, right? Very optimistic, enthusiastic. They have an enthusiastic persona, very creative. Challenges, again, they can be overly talkative. We talked about how they can be scattered a bit, inconsistent. Sometimes they can be attention seeking. So when you're doing astrological referencing with a three, you're going to see a lot of that attention seeking playing out in the reading or in the chart. And again, that probably also references their Leo placements. A lot of times they have that Leo sun or Leo rising. They could have Neptune in the first house. So there's a lot that plays in there, and you're going to have to look at their other placements, but attention seeking seems to be a problem that I see in a lot of three charts. It is associated again with wisdom, clarity, strong advisory skills. These people make very good advisors. So ideal careers, again, from an astrological, when we're talking about vocational astrology, somebody who has a three in vocational astrology, I am going to say, hey, you would do really well writing, performing, public speaking, being a marketing professional or some sort of teacher. They fit very well into those careers. People associated with this number are often considered the life of the party. Again, that Leo, bringing very positive energy and charisma to social situations. They do seem to be sincere, knowledgeable. They are good advisors. So sometimes I feel like they could make good counselors, good legal, lawyers, especially if they're doing civil law. They're often described as enthusiastic, artistic, possessing a desire to kind of communicate and express themselves as long as they're balanced. Um, so three is often regarded as a perfect number. Again, it symbolizes that harmony, wisdom, and understanding. And so in various cultures, it is associated with that synthesis of opposites and the progression of life. So again, very similar themes here astrologically when we're doing numerical charting. Some of the common misconceptions, they are highly knowledgeable, but their desire to communicate can sometimes lead to being superficial. We talked about that earlier. They do have a tendency to exaggerate. Again, That's more Leo and Neptune. So they got to watch out for inconsistencies and a tendency to, again, become very easily distracted. So if you're a three, you know what you need to work on, right? All right, and let's talk about this is my last slide before we go into closing. The tarot, right? Because numbers play a big part in the tarot, and tarot is a very popular form of divination. Even when we're looking at older forms of divination like cartomancy, the casting of lots, ceromancy. If we are looking at casting methods like tasiography, which is tea leaf reading, or coffee ground reading, we look for numbers. We look for numbers. I mean, even in root work, when I am burning a compound and I am doing a sacred fire cast or a root work cast, I am looking for letters and numbers in that flame activity. That's why I'm taking rapid fire pictures. I am taking so many pictures. And when I'm done, I'm looking at those pictures and I'm looking to see if any numbers or letters jump out at me, because those are communication devices from the universe. Like I said, it's quantum. All right, so let's talk about tarot a little bit. So in tarot, the number three represents again creativity. Oh shit, am I frozen? I was frozen for a second there. So it represents creativity, growth, expansion, and the initial tangible results of an idea. So moving beyond the planning phase and into the action phase. That is what the number three represents in tarot. It signifies the union of two opposing forces from the twos, right, to create something new. So it embodies collaboration, synthesis, and sometimes the heartache required for growth. We always want to look at the puppies and the rainbows. We never want to look at the shit show that's involved. Sometimes there's a shit show, you guys. Growth is not always pleasant. Usually it's it becomes pleasant after some shit, right? Change is never easy. No matter how amazing that change ends up being, you still got to go through the transition. So, key themes for the threes when we're looking at the minors. So, the Three of Wands. When I see the Three of Wands, I think of expansion, right? Foresight, planning for the long term, and kind of moving forward in a very fiery way, sometimes maybe impulsively. The Three of Cups, this is very celebratory. This is about friendships, collaborating. It's about community, coming together for like, a goal that we're all trying to accomplish, like here in Minneapolis, there's a lot of Three of Cups going on. There's been a lot of Three of Cups, for months now, people coming together for a common good, for a common goal. And so I love that with the Three of Cups. On its bad day, it could be overindulgence, right? Too much partying, too much, fanfare. So you got to keep it balanced. Three is about balance, harmonization. Three of Swords. The swords are a son of a bitch in the tarot. But the Three of Swords, it is about heartbreak. It is about feeling sorrow. It's about difficult truths that we have to accept. And it's also about emotional release. So as shitty as the Three of Swords is, and as much as people hate seeing it, that card, the first thing I always think of is there anything that's self-sabotage going on? Because life path threes, numerological threes, astrological chart threes, they love to self-sabotage. And so it could be a little bit of that. The other thing is too that sometimes a Three of Swords is necessary to grow. Um, it's necessary to break patterns, to break molds, to shift energy. It's a necessary evil, and that is life, right? It's not always puppies and corn dogs, you guys. The Three of Coins, I always think of teamwork, craftsmanship, skill, laying a solid foundation, building something, right? You're building something that you're going to reap rewards from in the future. Now, when we look at the major, that is the Empress, of course. The Empress, she represents so many things to me. Obviously, the first thing I look at whenever I see the Empress is this a young woman that I'm reading that is in the age where she might be getting pregnant soon. Is there a pregnancy? I think of beauty, very attractive women. It does represent nurturing, that mothering quality, fertility, creativity, and nature. There's like a nature spirit here with the Empress. So she really embodies the threes, energy of creative growth, of abundance, and unfolding of life, right? The unfolding of life. So I love the Empress. Even when she's in reverse, that usually is some sort of blockage with abundance or blockage with creativity. Like we're hitting a brick wall. We don't know how to take something that we have an idea about or that we have started and to turn it into something. We're kind of stuck. Sometimes it could be um, maybe we're going through a phase, maybe we're going through a weight gain. We don't know how to stop the weight gain. Maybe we are having confidence issues. We're not feeling beautiful. Maybe we are having a difficult pregnancy, or maybe we just had to end a pregnancy, due to health reasons. So, I mean, the Empress isn't all puppies either, but it is the power of three. And again, it's growth. Three is growth and harmonization. It's expansion. Things can't expand sometimes without a loosening of the bond, right? The breaking of a cycle or the ending of something. So everything, you have to take everything into consideration. But, it's not always, like I said, ponies and puppies, ponies and puppies. All right, common interpretations. So in the tarot, threes appear when energy is expanding, usually rapidly, and things are taking shape, kind of signaling like this a need to move from a brainstorming stage to active creation. It's an activity stage, or action stage. So it's often positive, it's often collaborative, but the Three of Swords does remind us that this expansion can sometimes involve very necessary, painful, emotional growth. So I'm just driving that home because, I like to keep things real. Let's talk about the good and the bad and the ugly and the pretty and everything in between. All right, there we are. Good old grave intentions. So I want to thank you guys. Patreon, I'm really trying to, grow our Patreon network. We do have some new offerings coming up in the next couple of months. I'm kind of finalizing those things now. We just had that podcast, that live podcast a couple of weeks ago. I thought it went pretty well. We might be doing another one of those soon. I think it's still viewable on Patreon. It was on AI and the implications of AI in the world of the esoteric, in divinating, spell casting, rituals, ritual writing, things of that nature. Um, but yeah, check us out. Main website to your left, Patreon to your right, our Instagram right below me. Check us out. I want to thank everybody for their continuing support, and I'm always here for follow-up questions. Let me stop sharing my screen. There we go. I'm always available for follow-up questions. If there's anything in a presentation that maybe you just need clarity on, feel free to email me. Sometimes I do get busy, so be patient with me. But I'm here for it. I'm here to bring, any kind of clarification that might be needed to anything I've discussed in any of my EDUs. But other than that, you guys stay magical and enjoy this beautiful springtime weather.